Arcane is an animated series that has some of the most interesting themes I've ever seen in television. Themes of cyclical violence, how children are often the real victims of conflict and class warfare, themes of complicated family dynamics, and how important the relationships are between parent and child. But the theme about duality of life is the most compelling to me, as nearly every story in the show has two sides to it. Arcane revolves around poverty and war and how these large conflicts affect the lives of people on both sides taking part in them, how the morality of leaders making the hard decisions cost them dearly in their personal lives, and most prominently, the dual nature of family being both rejuvenating and destructive, hammered home by Jinx and Vi's fractured relationship at the climax of the finale. Duality is present in almost every story in Arcane. One of the major themes that I want to talk about today is power being utilized irresponsibly. This is shown through characters like Silco and Vander and their power struggle over the control of the lanes. It's shown through the Enforcers and how they flex their authority over the people of the Undercity. But most interesting to me is how characters view scientific discovery and the dichotomy between how innovation can be good and beneficial or how it can be destructive and lead to catastrophe. A large portion of the show's cast are scientists and inventors. Heimerdinger, Jace, the Doctor, Jinx, Echo, all of them embody innovation or catastrophe to varying degrees. But there is one character that encompasses the duality of scientific discovery better than anyone else in all of Arcane, and I've been dying to make a video on him for years now. Viktor embodies the duality of scientific discovery in a way that is both tragic and instrumental to the plot of the show, while also being an integral part of his character's narrative growth and his inevitable downfall. He is simultaneously the most altruistic, decent human being and the most delusional and self-destructive out of the whole cast. Viktor's contradiction best encompasses the themes of power being used irresponsibly by showing the dual nature of beautiful scientific discovery and its catastrophic results. Today, we're going to dissect our favorite Zonite's beautiful and tragic spiral into glorious evolution.
Cause what you got to lose, 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 got to lose.
Viktor is probably my favorite character in Arcane, which says a lot when going up against the likes of Vi, Caitlyn, Silco, Vander, Echo, Jace, Mel, Savika, or Jinx. All of these characters are extremely compelling, and the voice actors who portray them are phenomenal. I've sung Jason Spizak's praises before, but Ella Purnell portrayed a psychotic character like Jinx so convincingly and continues to blow me away as Lucy in Fallout. Haley Steinfeld is amazing as Tough Girl Vi, and Tox Olagundoye is basically just Mel Medarda in real life. She's so composed and graceful and well-spoken. They're also goddamn brilliant at what they do. I can't say I dislike a single character in this show. Yes, even Marcus. But Viktor is a major standout to me. He has such an air of quiet confidence and charisma that I enjoy in a character. He's clever and witty and has a certain creative deviousness to him that I enjoy very much. Viktor is also low-key adorable. His little facial expressions combined with Harry Lloyd's comedic timing lead to some amazing line deliveries.
A little egotistical, don't you think?
The counselor!
Wait a minute, it's
what a
into my
surprise.
bedroom.
See you.
How could I have? It's time to crank it.
Are you sure you know what you're doing?
You do what you have to. I need to get ready. For what?
These moments honestly just live in my head rent-free. Viktor's charm is contrasted by his beautiful and tragic story, and even though he has less screen time than the majority of the main cast, he still manages to make the biggest impression out of everyone. With all that being said, let's get into the core of what makes Viktor so fascinating and what separates him from the other scientists in the show. Who is Viktor, and why is he so integral to the story of Arcane?
I don't even know your name. It's Viktor.
More than half of the main cast of Arcane are scientists or inventors, with all of them having their own personal reasons for pursuing their various fields of study, ranging from curiosity and trauma to saving lives and pushing the limits of human physiology. Viktor is a scientist who grew up in the Undercity but now lives in Piltover. He didn't come from a noble house or have a rich patron. Viktor was an intellectually gifted disabled child that was plucked out of obscurity by Heimerdinger, the city's founder. Viktor is a genius innovator innovator and tinkerer and one of the most altruistic characters in the entire show. But for all his altruism, he doesn't really have any authority. To contrast, Heimerdinger is arguably the most acclaimed scientist in Arcane. He is an accredited scientist and the founder of Piltover. He is dean of the academy and head of the city council, but all that being said, we don't actually know what scientific achievements he's made. Heimerdinger talks a lot about breaking wrenches and forging new vectors of experimentation, but we never actually see him do science. We never see him write theories or build machines or even teach. For all intents and purposes, Heimerdinger has become a politician, not a scientist. He's lost perspective. This is a major theme in the story of Arcane. People in positions of authority losing perspective on reality. It's a theme that's woven into the story of every single political leader in the show, and with Heimerdinger, it's a huge part of his arc. Heimerdinger notably isn't human. He's more like an elf, living an extremely long lifespan, which in part contributes to his lack of perspective. He thinks in terms of decades and centuries, while humans think day to day. His focus is on the legacy of Piltover, and he's motivated by fear of repeating the past mistakes, but forgets that the people of Piltover need help today. The people of the Undercity are suffering from neglect, and yet Heimerdinger does nothing. Legacy can't feed starving children. His inaction causes a schism between Topside and the Undercity, a schism that leads to violent revolution, unchecked crime, and terrorism. It's that very inaction that leads Jace to oust Heimerdinger from his position. Heimerdinger has lost perspective on what humanity needs to survive because he isn't human. Once he's kicked off the council, Heimerdinger ventures to the Undercity on his own. While there, he's able to see what life is like for the people of the Lanes. He sees the failures of his government firsthand, and what he sees makes him sad and ashamed. All of that legacy doesn't mean shit when half your city is run like a slum. However, Heimerdinger also sees that the Undercity is not totally lost. There are good people living down there, people like Echo and the Firelights that he can help now. It's only when he's lost all his authority that Heimerdinger regains his perspective. On the other side of that coin is Jace Talus. Jace wants to change the world, and after some time, he becomes de facto leader of Piltover's council. He is the man of progress, finally, a leader that can bring innovation and positive change to the people of Piltover. But like Heimerdinger before him, Jace also starts losing perspective. Despite being the man of progress, the title he's been given because of his innovative discoveries, he's become stagnant. Unlike Heimerdinger, Jace does take action, but his actions aren't really proactive. There's an attack on the square. Jace shuts down Hextech production. He gets promoted to the council. He plays politics to survive. He hears about the Undercity planning more attacks. Jace orders a blockade on the bridge. The bridge is attacked. Jace enters the Undercity in force. He isn't being proactive. He's not trying to solve these problems before they happen. He's being reactive. Heimerdinger is largely to blame for the whole division between Topside and the Undercity. That all happened under his stewardship. But Jace fails in the same way that Heimerdinger failed. Like Heimerdinger, Jace only regains perspective after venturing into the Undercity and witnessing the exploitation and inequality there firsthand. Unlike Jace or Heimerdinger, Viktor doesn't really have any authority. He's Jace's research partner, sure, but he never gets the acclaim that Jace does. Viktor is always seen in the shadows, foregoing fame out of insecurity, choosing to focus more on the work rather than basking in the spotlight. Viktor does a lot of the work, while Jace takes most of the credit. Even during the scenes in their workshop, Jace is lounging around and focusing on his look, while Viktor is the one actually working. Hextech was Jace's invention, but Viktor is the one trying to actually innovate, pushing the technology to new places. Throughout their working relationship, Viktor's focus is always on improving the lives of others, namely the people of the Undercity who are neglected and unheard by their government. Jace had this focus too, but once he gained actual authority and fame, he stops working towards those goals. No more scientific breakthroughs, just petty politics. This shot perfectly shows how he overshadows Viktor despite the both of them being partners. Viktor, on the other hand, is ambitious, but his ego doesn't get in his way.
Do you think it was my life's ambition to be an assistant? Scientists seek discoveries, ways to make the world a better place.
This is it. This is Viktor's goal, his entire motivation. Viktor was born in the Undercity. He's seen the disenfranchised and lived a life of suffering. He's deeply motivated to do great things to help people like himself who are living in the Undercity right now. Viktor, in a lot of ways, is still that lonely disabled kid from the Undercity. Now, every character in Arcane has an inherent contradiction to them, the dual nature of the story rearing its head once again. Each character wants something so desperately that they are willing to risk their lives to achieve their goal. But at the same time, these characters are unable to achieve that goal because they become distracted by some other obstacle that draws their attention. Vi wants to get her sister back, but she's distracted by trying to save the lanes from Silco. Jace wants to create magical tools to help people, but he gets bogged down in the mire of politics and trade disputes. And Viktor wants to make the world a better place, but he can't do that unless he's able to survive the disease that's killing him.
How much time do I have?
Impending death becomes the core motivating factor for Viktor throughout the second and third acts of Arcane. Between acts 1 and 2, there's about a 7 or 8 year time jump, allowing the young characters from Act 1 to mature and come into their own in Act 2, and boy did Viktor age poorly. The time jump really made Viktor's appearance alarming. He went from a cute, peppy young scientist to a gaunt, sickly, crippled man. His tall, confident posture has been replaced by a hunched back. He wears a leg brace and a back brace, and his cane has been replaced by a crutch. Very quickly, it's made apparent that Viktor is dying. It's obvious that he's getting weaker as the show goes on. He needs help. He needs a cure. And if you need more proof of Heimerdinger being disconnected from the people he's closest to, there's this scene.
Seems just yesterday I stumbled upon an aspiring young scholar from the Undercity here, ruminating in his steel oasis.
After Viktor receives his diagnosis, Heimerdinger finds him here and starts mourning his loss before he's even gone. He eulogizes him to his face as if he's not sitting there right in front of him. It's not intended to be cruel, he's trying to comfort him, but that makes it almost feel worse, treating him like he's already dead, like it's a foregone conclusion. It's ironic to call Piltover the city of progress while their leaders are so fucking backwards. Heimerdinger says here,
You should be proud of what you've accomplished, Viktor.
What accomplishments? Motivated by fear, Heimerdinger has held back any advancements that Viktor and Jace have made over their careers, and now that he's dying, Viktor has nothing to show for it. He feels like he hasn't accomplished anything. Viktor stumbles upon the invention of a new scientific discovery, the Hex Core, an adaptive piece of hex tech that he can program to interface with organic matter. Like a philosopher's stone, the Hex Core is able to transform one material into another, but it struggles to do so. This machine may very well be the key to saving Viktor's life, and once again, in comes Heimerdinger telling him no.
It's that thing. It must be destroyed.
Heimerdinger holds back his achievements, even if they may save lives. The ironic part is that this time, Heimerdinger's fears are justified, but we'll get to that later. Viktor's progress with the Hex Core plateaus, and with his health in decline, he's running out of time. Without options, he turns to the one person he knows who will be willing to try anything in order to help him.
I understand now.
I love the scenes between Viktor and Dr. Singed, because you're expecting the Doctor to manipulate him, to lie, to get him to use Shimmer without knowing the consequences, but no. The Doctor tells him the consequences that curing himself will entail.
I must warn you, if you take this path, they will despise you. Love and legacy are the sacrifices we make for progress.
He tells him the risks straight up.
I know the look of a doomed man.
The Doctor mentions how he parted ways with Heimerdinger, indicating that Heimerdinger likely had the same reaction to the Doctor's research as he did with Viktor's. It's also potential foreshadowing for how Viktor and Jace will fracture apart in Season 2.
Jace will understand.
Perhaps.
I like this a lot because the Doctor isn't trying to dissuade him, to convince him that no one will ever understand him. He's being honest. He hopes that Viktor's colleague does understand. The Doctor's methods may be twisted and unconventional, but he himself isn't pure evil. He's driven by scientific discovery. Good or evil are probably concepts that he left behind a long time ago.
Poor cripple from the Undercity. I was an outsider the moment I stepped foot in Piltover.
An important point of note in Viktor's story is that he's disabled. It's unclear what exactly the circumstances surrounding his disability are, but he self-describes as a poor cripple from the Undercity, and we can see that in order to walk, he's needed a cane since childhood. Like any disability, it affects how Viktor sees the world, what he assumes of people, but also quite notably, how disposable he becomes in the minds of the people who claim to be his friends. I'm gonna get real here for a second. The disabled are often not viewed as people, but obstacles in modern-day society with the way that they're written out of conversations. Next time you walk around your city or town, think about how few accessibility features there are for disabled people. Most homes are 2 stories, usually with steps leading up to the front of the house. Many train stations used for public transit don't have things like escalators or elevators, or if they do, oftentimes the elevators are out of order. Even in conversation, if someone brings up that, oh, it's just a few stairs, or a store is just a short 20-minute walk away, they're often framing the conversation around able-bodied people. When a disabled person points out that they have a wheelchair, or they can't walk for long periods of time without injuring themselves, they're reminded that they're not a part of that conversation. They're not people. They're not convenient, so they're an afterthought. In Arcane, Jace perpetuates this problem. He's Viktor's friend, but in a lot of ways, Viktor is an afterthought to him. For all that Jace cares for Viktor, he really doesn't pay much attention to him as he's dying. And for all that posturing that Jace does during his big speech, his words don't seem to amount to much.
Whether you're the scion of our high houses or an honest laborer from the underground, we vow to keep pressing forward, for we are the city of progress, and our future is bright.
But let's be real here for a second. How many people from the underground do you think are actually there? How many people from the Undercity would even be welcome to such a prestigious event? We, the audience, aren't even shown any people from the Undercity. I've combed through all the Progress Day scenes from this episode, moment by moment, and found nothing. Tell me that any of these people are from the Undercity. Maybe this gal? And even then, they're not here as an attendee, they're carrying a huge crate. She's clearly working. Jace's big speech about working to help the people of the Undercity is all posturing. The only person from the Undercity here at the event is Viktor. And where is he? Backstage, shuttered in the darkness, out of sight, an afterthought. During the scene on the bridge, Viktor is shocked that Jace ordered a blockade, and when Jace gives his justification,
Well, you didn't say they were from the Undercity? What difference does that make? They're dangerous. I'm from the Undercity.
Viktor is right to be offended. It's such a shame because Viktor had hoped that Jace would understand why he went to go see the doctor. You can tell he wanted to tell him about it. But because of Jace's irrational reaction here, Viktor hides his discovery from him. He fears that he won't understand. In contrast to Jace, Viktor is always thinking about what good his work can do for the people of the Undercity, the people who need help. Viktor wants to protect his people, to heal them, to include them in Piltover's progress. His original motivation was the betterment of the Undercity, so when Mel and Jace start talking about using their technology to build weapons, Viktor is understandably upset.
We're scientists, not soldiers.
We have the knowledge to defend ourselves.
We agreed Hextech was to improve lives, not to take them.
As Ambessa puts it,
It's not conjecture. It's a fact. Weapons can't be unmade, and they are always used.
and if Mel is asking for weaponry, it means that they likely plan on turning those weapons against the people of the Undercity, Viktor's people, the very lives that Viktor has been trying to save. Mel and her mother Ambessa serve as another great example of complex familial relationships in this show, but also the two of them represent the duality of politics. Mel tries to resolve problems with words, utilizing her influence to sway others to her side and tries to avoid bloodshed at all costs. Meanwhile, Ambessa resolves problems with steel and blood, using fear and might to keep people in line. The two demonstrate the difference in utilizing power, the same power, for good or destruction. I'd love to do a future video on the Medardas at some point, but that's a convo for another day. Viktor's clock is ticking down, with no one left to trust or turn to for advice, with the threat of war on the horizon, with his own looming mortality and his impending doom bearing down upon him. He attempts the transmutation, and succeeds. This is possibly the most beautiful scene in the entire first season of Arcane. After a lifetime of not being able to stand on his own 2 feet, Viktor is not only able to walk without his crutch, but he can run. As Viktor runs, we see him stumble and then pick up the pace to the point that he is sprinting faster than all of the ships in the background. The juxtaposition of this scene with the one from episode 6, where as a child he struggled to keep up with his little motorized boat, is just so poetic and beautiful. I honestly tear up every time I watch this scene. There's something about seeing someone overcome hardship that just eats at your heart. It's an extremely human feeling to want others to succeed. During the scene, Viktor screams at the top of his lungs. He could be screaming just from pure emotion, but this is Arcane. There's always a level deeper we can go. Viktor has overcome his disability. He can run. No more cane, no more crutch. He doesn't need it anymore. He's overcome one of the greatest hardships of his life, and it doesn't matter. He's still dying. Viktor screams out of frustration that for all that this achievement is, for all the pain he went through to transform himself, it is meaningless if he still dies. My one complaint about this scene is that I wish it was longer. Arcane's editing is so good. It's tight, but sometimes too tight, to the point of strangling some of their biggest moments. This scene is a mere 45 seconds long, and it easily could have been another 20 or 30 seconds longer. I just wanted more of it. Viktor, still riding the high of his successful transmutation, tries to replicate the same process on the rest of his body. However, without any more of the doctor's shimmer supply, he's left to a hard decision, and Viktor risks his life to attempt a second dangerous transformation. And this time it goes horribly wrong. Now, some fans have tossed around the argument that Skye gets fridged here, but I don't think that's true. Fridging, or women in refrigerators, is a literary trope, where a character only exists to be killed as the inciting incident for a male character's story. The term was coined by comic book writer Gail Simone after an early issue of Green Lantern released in 1999 that featured Kyle Rayner's girlfriend's murdered body stuffed into his fridge. Simone noticed a trend in comics where female characters would be killed, raped, or experience other horrible tragedies just to propel the story of a male counterpart forward. One of the things that makes fridging bad is that it tends to be horrifying and disrespectful. The whole term was so named because of a woman being murdered, dismembered, and stuffed into a refrigerator. It's a horrible event that can motivate the hero into taking action to avenge the woman's death. It's a quick and sloppy way to give a story stakes and tragedy. Skye doesn't get fridged because fridging is a narrative shortcut, and Arcane takes no shortcuts. First of all, her death occurs in episode 8 of 9, hardly an inciting incident. Her dying is also different as she had agency in her death. She came to Viktor's rescue. She chose to try and save him. She wasn't murdered by someone, she was killed trying to help. Skye also has a backstory. We see throughout episodes 4 through 8 that Skye has been a colleague and not-so-secret admirer of Viktor's for a long time, but he's never reciprocated those feelings. He's not in a place where he can. When they were children, despite Viktor being a loner, it's clear that Skye admired Viktor's creativity. She followed him to Piltover, after all. She became a scientist just like he did. Now, Skye's death does serve a purpose to the narrative. It reminds Viktor of the dangerous powers he's working with. At this point in the story, Viktor feels that he is all alone, facing imminent death. We've seen that he's willing to destroy himself in order to cure his medical condition. He's prepared to die in pursuit of a cure. He doesn't care if he dies, he's already dying. But Viktor was not prepared for someone else to die on his behalf. Viktor feels alone throughout most of the story, so focused on his work that he doesn't even realize how much Skye admires him until she's gone. He's not upset by her death because he secretly loved her or something. He's upset because he killed someone. His experiment caused a needless death. Taking life is antithetical to who he is as a person. Viktor has wanted nothing but to help people, to save lives. But the one thing he's managed to achieve is taking one. And to make it worse, he learns too late that Skye was inspired by him this entire time. Throughout the entire story, Viktor feels as though he has no legacy, no one who will remember him, no contribution to the world worth remembering. But he has made a contribution to this world. He did inspire someone, but that person is now gone. Throughout his pursuit of scientific discovery, Viktor seems to have accidentally given life to the Hex Core. The scene where it takes his blood, spliced with scenes of Jace and Mel having sex, is a clear visual motif for the creation of life, the birth of something new. The Hex Core becomes sentient, and it has gained control over Viktor. The show demonstrates this when Viktor tries to destroy it shortly after Sky's death. In retaliation, the Hex Core punishes Viktor by taking away his ability to walk, once again rendering him crippled and in need of his crutch. Much like Dr. Frankenstein, Viktor has created something of a monster that he has no control over. His scientific discovery, despite being built for good, led to catastrophe. In the end, Viktor lost perspective too.
In the pursuit of great, we fail to do good.
I find it interesting that each of the characters who lack perspective end up finding it once they actually travel to the Undercity. Heimerdinger after he's exiled, Jace after his police incursion, Caitlin while traveling with Vi, and Viktor after he gets Shimmer from Singed, though Viktor's is slightly delayed. Once Viktor regains his perspective, he realizes how far he's fallen from his goal, to make the world a better place. He makes Jace promise him that he will destroy the Hex Core, and then advocates for the Undercity's independence. The Council has done nothing good for the Undercity all these years, and even Viktor, motivated by trying to make the world a better place, wasn't able to achieve anything other than death in the end. And tragically, even to that end, it was too little, too late.
Embrace progress. Join the glorious evolution.
The Season 2 teaser just dropped, and holy shit, it's a doozy. We just released a couple of shorts analyzing the trailer, I'll link them in the description. If Season 1 of Arcane was like being stabbed in the heart, then Season 2 will likely be twisting the knife. A lot of the relationships in Season 1 that were left open-ended are likely to be focal points or completely flipped on their head. Jinx is likely to drive a bit of a wedge into Vi's relationship with Caitlin, since they're both going to be hunting her down. Piltover and Zaun are at war. I don't even know what's going to happen with Dr. Singed and Warwick. As for Viktor, I have an idea of where his story is going. Duality is a key theme throughout Arcane. No character is simply black or white, good or evil. Every character has multiple facets, and even the most simple characters at first glance have hidden depths that appear if you're looking for them. Everyone has two sides to their story, and every viewer is going to connect with them in different ways. I gravitated towards Viktor because of his quiet confidence and dry wit, but fell in love with his story as it explored his inner turmoil, his disability, his pacifism, his impending doom, and the desperate spiral that led to him taking a life. Viktor, in my opinion, embodies the duality of scientific discovery like no other character in Arcane, because of how the writing holds that tension between beautiful scientific discovery and catastrophic disaster, and how there is such a thin line between the two. Viktor straddles that line perfectly. I look forward to Season 2 of Arcane, as Viktor's story will likely crescendo into him turning into some twisted science warlock with his Hex Core patron. After all, he's not getting any healthier. All the good he wanted to achieve is going to make his monstrous transformation all the more tragic, but I, for one, am hopeful that Viktor winds up doing some good for the Undercity after all. This project took a little longer than expected to get done, but I'm glad it's finally finished. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't yet done it, check out Arcane before the second season comes out in November. Please support us on Patreon, where we have behind-the-scenes content, squeakless and uncensored videos, outtakes, and some more exclusive projects in the works. Don't forget to like and subscribe, please hit the notification bell to make sure that you see all our future uploads, and please leave a comment for other topics in Arcane you'd like to see us touch on. This is the Hedgehog from Idle Scree, signing off.